The Hare and the Tortoise, a game by Yellow in their Tales and Games line. And I really like the presentation of these games. They look like books. I played one of their games in the system before, in this line before, the Tale of the Three Little Pigs. I love it. I could play just with adults, not simply as a children's game. And also my daughter loves it. So I was very excited to try another game in the same line with her. The other Tortoise, they told my daughter the tale because I realized she didn't know it, and she found it very interesting. And then I was like, what a coincidence! I also have a game on that subject. This was like, no way! What are the odds? Dad, you're amazing. I know. The Hare and the Tortoise. It is a racing game in which the players will bet on animals that are racing through this track here. There is a set of tiles that you set in a track at the beginning of the game. The details of the track don't really matter. You simply need to have a starting point and a finish line. You also have the cutest thing in the world. Look at this, a podium where the animals will go at the end of the race. And here is the number of points that they will score for you depending on the position. So depending on the animals that you bet on, you will score points based on how they will be placed on the podium. And the animals are represented by those wooden pawns with stickers on them. We have the wolf, the hare, the fox, the lamb, and the tortoise. Yeah, a couple of animals have been added from the original story to make things a little more interesting. There are these cards that simply represent the runners, and you distribute them face down at the beginning of the game. If you have two players, you distribute two cards to each player and you put away the remaining one. If you have more than two players, then each player simply receives one. The card is to remain absolutely secret. You must not reveal to anybody what the card is. If you're playing with a young player, like 4 or 5-year-old, this is probably the single most difficult thing in the entire game. Not telling, not showing, not playing with it, that's hard. Everything else, easy. But keeping a secret, oh, that's tough. But it's very important that the players must not know the card that you have, and no one must know which are the cards that nobody received, and that will be put back in the box. Then, next, each player receives a hand of 7 cards from this deck, and this deck simply represents the animals. Each card has one of the animals. There's only one card, 3 of the wolf cards have a special symbol here because they have a special effect. Other than that, you simply have the animal on the card. Very simple to read, no crazy card game with a lot of symbols and things to read. A 4-year-old can read it, and the art is so pleasant and nice that it makes the game very attractive to young players. You receive a hand of 7 of these cards, and you choose one, say this one, that you place face down by the card that you received. Suppose that this is my secret. These are my 2 secret cards. These are the cards that represent the animals that I'm gambling on, that I'm betting on. If you're playing with very young kids, you can also play a variant, which is, you don't use this one. You simply assign an animal to each player, and that is the animal that they will want to win. Up to you. Then each player will be left with a hand of 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. And then players start playing. Players go around the table playing cards during their turn. During your turn, you can play between 1 and 4 cards, which means you have to play at least 1 card. And the cards that you play have to all represent the same animal. So in this case, I could play 3 lambs, or a tortoise, or 2 wolves. I don't have to discard all that I want. I could just play a single lamb if I wanted, or 2 or 3, but I wouldn't be able to do this. They had to be the same animal. The cards that you play go in a common pool. We call it the bank, even though I don't know that that term really describes the situation. And then next player goes, and next player will also play cards. Suppose next player wants to play that, and next player wants to do that, and then next player does something else. Players will keep playing cards in the common pool. You probably will want not to put it on the track. Players will keep playing cards in the common pool until one of two things will happen, whichever happens first. Either there is a total of 8 cards in the pool at any one point. It has to be exactly 8, you cannot go above 8, or 4 cards are played with the same animal, which means technically you can meet that condition simply with one single play by playing 4 cards representing the same animal. Whichever happens, a total of 8 or 4 of the same, the card play is interrupted because now the race is triggered, the animals will run. And there are 2 ways of solving or of resolving this. The game can be played at 2 levels of difficulty. There is the basic game and the advanced game, or the full game. They all rely on the same idea. What I explained so far applies to both games. Simply how you then resolve the movement of the animals changes. In the very basic version of the game, the animals will simply move at a rate of 1 space per card that is played. In this case, the lamb will move by 4, the hare by 1, the turtle by 1, and the wolf by 2. That's it. And I recommend, if you're introducing new players, that you play at least a game in this fashion. Then you can introduce your friends, especially if it's young friends, to the full version of the game, in which, when you're resolving the race, you use this little play rate, because you will then realize that the animals will activate in order from top to bottom. This is very important. And most importantly, they run and behave in different way. A lot of work has been done here to portray the psychology of these animals through the mechanics of the game. The hare. If 1, 2, 3, or 4 cards were played for the hare, the hare moves by 2. That's how fast she is. Just like a single card, moves by 2. So actually, if you were betting on the hare, it could be a good idea to try to trigger as many of these phases as possible with a single card each time, because that's excellent use of your resources. A single hare allows you to move by 2. But the hare, we know, is a little overconfident. If the hare is in first position and 4 cards were played for the hare then doesn't run, takes a nap, gets a snack, goes to visit his Aunt Petunia. What do I know what the hare does? But I know what the hare is not doing, not running, you lazy, overconfident mammal. The turtle, on the contrary, very stubborn, very resilient. The hare will move every time that this phase is triggered, because the hare moves even with 0 cards. The turtle moves even with 0 cards played on it. So when the race phase happens, the turtle moves by 1 if 0, 1, 2, or 3 cards were played. And even by 2, even gets a little dash from time to time if 4 cards were played for the hare. Why do I keep calling it the hare? The turtle. The turtle is the turtle that moves every time, slowly, but reliably, and with an occasional little run. The wolf, oh, this is pretty interesting. The wolf, with 1 or 2 cards being played for the wolf, and that would be the case, the wolf moves by 1. With 3 or 4, the wolf moves by the number of cards played minus 1, which is in reality by 2 or by 3 spaces. But if a card with the howl symbol was played, then the wolf is howling and everybody else has the tuna salad scared out of them. They're all hiding in the bushes and no one dares to get out. That is, in that phase, only the wolf gets to move. Everything else is not considered. Which means that this is very great for the wolf, but it can be useful for other players too. If the player with the wolf plays the howl, or even another player plays the card with the howling symbol early, then everybody knows that that's a good turn to refresh your hand, to get rid of cards that you know would benefit other players, because at that point, in any case, they will not be triggered because of the howling effect. The fox, very reliable and predictable. Surprising when you think that should be a character very subtle and full of tricks. In reality, simply the fox reliably moves by a number of spaces equal to the number of cards with the fox symbol. One card, one space, two cards, two spaces, and so on. The lamb is a little fast and nervous fellow, so runs like crazy because moves by the number of spaces, by the number of cards played for the lamb, plus one. With 4 cards played, this little nervous fellow runs for 5 full spaces. But the lamb can also get tired by all this running, and so what happens is that then when the lamb encounters a stream space, the lamb has to stop, and that's it. The rest of the movement is wasted. So if you are betting on the lamb, you'd better try to time things out well so you don't waste your resources in the proximity of a stream, and then you can maximize your resources in other parts of the track. So the animals will run. Once you resolve the race phase, you simply discard all these cards and you repeat the card play phase. Every time the players play cards, they get cards back to refill their hand so that they will always have 6 at the end and at the beginning of their turn. You play cards going around the table, interrupt when one of the 2 conditions is met. Animals run, repeat, repeat, repeat until 3 animals cross the finish line and they get on the podium in the position that they earn by running. And the other animals, if you want, they can also end the race and line up by the podium. Why would you do so? Because it's nice if you're playing with a child and all the animals of the child are behind and you're like, no, the game is over, you're not even reaching the finish line. What kind of adult are you? No, you need to find these ways that are completely pointless from the mechanical point of view, but they make things nicer for the child. Another thing that you can do, in fact, is simply when the animals cross the line, they don't get on the podium immediately. They line up for the podium because they have to wait until the ceremony starts. Everybody has to make it to the finish line before we can celebrate. So you line them up by the podium in the order in which they arrived. Then players reveal their card. If you're playing with a single card, you discard the animals that are not represented by anybody, and then if you have up to 3 players, then they simply all get on the podium and they're happy. If you have 4 players, you'll have to invent a 4th medal after gold, silver, and bronze. I don't know, chocolate. Well, actually, that probably would be the best medal for young children. You'll figure something out. But if you have up to 3 players, we use this trick. Everybody gets on the podium, and in reality, then people still get placed where they need and deserve to be placed in the race, and it is fun that way. My friends, this is fun stuff. The game of the 3 Little Pigs was a game to me that perfectly doubled as a game you play for children, with children, and a game you play with adults only. I remember playing that a lot at Gen Con with adults only, played it with adults afterwards. It was a filler, but a very rewarding one. I would say a meaty filler in terms of the experience and how fun it was. The Hare and the Tortoise doesn't have that perfect balance, but still I think has a very good balance. It's a good deal because it is very engaging to play with young children, and it still works as a light diversion. I would say Little Pigs is excellent children game and excellent filler for adults. This one, Hare the Tortoise, is an excellent game for children and a good solid light filler for adults. With adults, even you have a couple of hand management things that you can do, timing things, secret identity. If you play with adults, the players will spend much more time than children do trying to figure out what the opponents have and having that extra wrinkle. With children, they will tend to go to help the cards, to help the animals that they have, and put less effort in thwarting the efforts of the opponents, which If you're playing with adults, of course, it's a huge part of the game, trying to figure out what everybody has, which then, of course, means that adults that are playing subtly may even give temporary benefits to other animals that they're not interested in to give themselves an advantage in other regards by fooling the opponents. A lot of fun stuff to be had from this game. Again, for adults, it is a light diversion, but it is an effective one. For children, this game is just amazing. It's just so fun. The components look so good, so attractive. Wooden pieces, just from a tactile point of view, these pieces with the little animals are made of wood, just so pleasant to move around. The tiles look great. Little podium is beyond adorable. The frame that you have on the finish line, that's the only weak element in the components, because it really is very wobbly. It doesn't stand up very well. It will fall fairly often. You can just forget about it. That's a minor detail. People will be so excited looking at these super colorful, nice cards to really care too much about the area, the frame of the finish line. And it's great that you can play the game in two different ways. You can introduce a very young player to the basic game. My daughter, the youngest one, who is 2.5, can pretty much almost get the game. Counting to 8 is a little tough to her, so she just can't do it. It's more than tough. But the basic idea she gets, and actually we often ask her to move the animals for us. The 4-year-old, I was a little worried that all these animals behave in a different way could be a little too difficult. So at the beginning I didn't even teach her that version. We just played the basic version of the animals running based on a number of cards without special effects and abilities. And then she herself saw the player aid and started asking me about it, and I started explaining, and I thought, what the heck, let's try. And she picked up in no time. The fact that the cards are in order, that are those symbols, so that I guess one of the advantages of not having words there is that then the producers, the makers, did not have to translate it to sell it to different countries. But it also works well for children that can recognize numbers, because that's a great, gives an excellent job in giving a visual reminder of how the animals work to children that don't know how to read yet. So my daughter had no problem getting into the full game. Some of the subtleties she doesn't see yet, but she plays proficiently. We also played it with other children, and I can tell you other children also had no problem picking up the game as long as we taught first the basic version, and then after we played a game that way, we added the player aid, we added the variable powers, and the game became even more interesting. My daughters and I still won when we played against other kids because we're more proficient and we're also brutal, but the other kids had fun playing the game. That is what really, really matters. It's a great game. The Hare and the Tortoise by Aiello. Another great game in this Tales and Games line. I love it. There's a game in the line that I haven't played yet. It's about Baba Yaga. I think I need to try that one too at some point, because if it is just half as good as the games in this line that I played so far, I think it is going to be pretty good. The Hare the Tortoise, definitely highly recommended as a game to play with young gamers, and as a filler, as a light diversion. I think you can have some laughs and definitely some rewarding moments, even if you're playing this game with adults only.